Good morning, everyone. My name is Leesa Barnes. That hasn't changed in the last hour. And this is the corporate podcasting panel discussion. And I'm going to ask questions just to lead us off. I'll introduce our panelists, and I will ask some questions just to start us off. But I certainly invite some of you that if you have questions, please ask. Just show of hands, and I'll acknowledge you, and just ask, please. This is interactive. If you have questions that you need to know and need to be answered, please ask. So let me first introduce our panel. And starting to my far left, Christopher Penn. Christopher Penn is the host of the Financial Aid Podcast. And it's financialaidpodcast.com.
That's right.
So if any of you want a good laugh, and I tell you, even though it's all about money, there are some great transcripts that are posted on Chris's blog. And there was one, well, no, I won't get into that. But anyways, check that out. Beside him is John Wall. John Wall is host of The M Show. Oh, we didn't get, oh, sorry, I should apologize. Applause for John, but not for Chris. That's my fault. Pause. And John is someone I've met and been interacting with online for about, 6 months.
10 minutes of news, talk, and entertainment.
Yeah, and now I get to meet him in person. So welcome, John.
Thank you.
And welcome to Chris. And then right here to my closest left is Richard. Richard from PodChannels. And thank you. And he has offered to host all of our audio files and video from each of our sessions. So that's why it's important that we record each one. So thank you so much, Richard. That was awesome. Thank you. All right, to start us off, what is corporate No, that's too obvious. So many corporations are podcasting. One of our sponsors is Scotiabank. And they're one of the first banks in Canada to start podcasting. And what I find interesting is they're one of the oldest industries in this country. Yet they're one of the first to be out of the gate podcasting. So one of my first questions is why is it that more corporations are not podcasting? We see that a lot of indie podcasts are out there, independent. Why aren't more corporations out there podcasting?
Is that just like throw it out?
Yeah, throw it out, and whoever.
One thing in the student loan industry, there are a lot of restrictions on financial institutions in the United States about what they can and cannot say, liability issues. As an example, there's one issue just of an email post on a list talking about a company that was remarketing student loans. A university got wind of what this company does on the side, is payday loans, and dropped the lender, and that cost them $100 million in loan volume just from one email.
Wow.
So there's a lot of liability. There's a lot of, it's really risky if you don't control the message.
That and education is the other deal. I mean, this is a new way to communicate, and a lot of established corporations have been doing business the same way for up to hundreds of years. So trying to get a new method of communication corporation is just a challenge in itself. There's a lot of, we talk about the missionary sale. You've got to go in first. You have to teach everybody about what this is all about before you can just get up and run.
No, absolutely. I find that for me, the sales cycle is about 4 or 5 months long, because first you have to educate, and that takes a lot of time. And then it's like, somebody says, "Oh, the cool idea. Now tell the rest of my staff." And you tell the rest of the staff, and then it's like, "Oh, cool idea. Tell the whole company." Well, that hasn't happened yet, but hoping it does. But the sales cycle is so long because it starts with the education, and then you have to move into then the sale. And so that can be exhausting from a consulting standpoint. And of course, from a corporation standpoint, they don't get it. They don't get it. And for those of you out here who are listening, why is it that a lot of people don't get it?
Well, look at what happened at the bar last night when we were talking to people about what podcasting was. And at the restaurant, too. We were talking to this one waiter. Young kid, probably mid-20s and stuff, and it took us about 15 minutes to try and explain what podcasting was to him because he couldn't wrap his head around the concept.
So then how do we explain what podcasting is to a gray-haired person? Are there any gray hairs in the room? Okay, no offense. Wait a minute, you don't have any hair. No offense, guys. But
I'll jump in a little bit too here. I mean, a couple things that strike me. One is the experience for the end users is not easy. So I think we're still kind of between early adoption and mass adoption of podcasting. It's a frequency medium. So, it takes a real commitment on behalf of producers to create programming that occurs on a frequency basis. I think radio has been pretty well positioned to enter the frequency media. They really know how to create quality content, but not necessarily niche content that sort of engages a conversation with a particular audience. And
so in terms of, got you.
Well, I was going to say, one of the things that I think has to happen from a podcasting standpoint is if you've got established groups, say Scotiabank, for example, and they start marketing to a larger extent, they market their fact that they have a podcast and that you can find the podcast, and that when bigger corporations use it as a tool as part of their marketing channel and say, folks, by the way, we've got, in addition to the website, which we now put on everything, and it took them a couple of years to realize how important that was, that they now put their podcasts and where they're available also on their website and use that as a marketing tool. If they do that and that becomes more of a corporate standard, you're going to see the acceptance and the understanding of the audience. Oh, well, podcast, it's not just somebody out there talking about their day or something inconsequential. There's meat there. There's content that's valuable. People started using couponing on websites as a way to draw people to websites. So there's going to have to be some sort of marketing tool, I think, from a corporation standpoint to get people in there as well.
Okay, so that's a good point. And some people will see podcasting as a marketing tool. Others will say it's a communications tool. Others will say it's a sales tool. So when you approach corporations, what do you tell them it is? And how do you sell it to them so that they understand what podcasting is going to do? Because many times it's all about the bottom line. Is it going to help me save money? Is it going to help me print less brochures? So what angle do you come from?
I kind of found that there's two major categories of those people that you're talking to. There's the ones that do understand the technology already, and that's the easy group to sell, basically. I mean, the only questions that have to be answered there is, what is your message and what are you trying to get across? How is it going to fit into your marketing mix? On the other side are the corporations that don't understand the technology and don't realize that there's some reach there, and this is just another way in a full arsenal of tools in how to get to your customers and prospects. That's where you're going to spend a lot more time on education there. If you want to get to profitability fast, maybe just find the guys that already understand the technology. It's going to save you a lot of time. But just to get a feel for the group too, I'd like to ask people kind of on two sides of the coin. How many people here are kind of already understand the technology and are deep in and are trying to get a corporation to buy in, versus how many people don't really understand the technology even and are just kind of one-on-one level? Who's already trying to sell a podcast here? Okay, and then who's just like kind of doesn't really know much and is just trying to get their feet on the ground? Okay, so there's a lot of people already trying to work and get through the door. That's good, so we can kind of keep things up.
One of the challenges I find is also reassuring the client that the message is going to reach their intended audience. That could be, anything from their client having the proper player to receive the message to getting results like that return on investment, that information.
Yeah,
do you guys approach that?
The way that I've been tackling that is you do need a measurable outcome. Like for my company, I'm the CTO of the Student Loan Network, so the end goal is a funded student loan. I sign up essentially as an affiliate of my own company and use those links and stuff in my collateral, my blog, my podcast, and things. And I can say, okay, from this link here, this loan, this loan, this loan, this loan are closed. If you don't have that measurable outcome, then yeah, it's a lot harder to prove return on investment. Like you can't really, there's no objective metric for brand equity other than, hey, do you recognize this brand, yes or no? The other thing that's helpful is change your language to match what people are accustomed to seeing and hearing. Like I describe my show as internet radio because for folks like my CEO, internet radio is radio on the internet. Okay, that works. Podcast, you get. Oh, I don't have an iPod. You don't. Yeah, the internet radio works The last thing I would suggest is put together demographics as much as possible of your audience and measure your audience. One of the easiest ways I've found to do that is set up like a MySpace profile for your show or for whatever it is. Get your listeners to add themselves as friends, then you extract the data out of MySpace, because a lot of people self-identify: age, location, race, ethnicity, education, their college education, and you can now create a really nice media sheet that matches anything corporate radio can put out, and it's in a form that an executive summary, someone can look at it, oh, okay, I get it, we'll work with this, or no, that's not our audience.
So I'm going to talk about numbers in a sec on how to measure, but I just want to get these questions over here. So Jerry, then June, and then Bob. So Jerry.
I'm in the corporate world, and my experience is that while what you say is the case, what really holds up the corporate world from making decisions is that terribly technological acronym called CYA. in which each person in the chain has as his or her principal concern their job and not making a mistake. And what we're in is something that may be well known to us, but it's incredibly groundbreaking. And for example, one of the other major Canadian banks, which remain better nameless, is a client of ours and a valued client. Well, what Scotiabank has done is astonishing, because I would guess that our client is 3 to 5 years away from emulating that. And so I would put CYA, internal CYA, as reason 80% and everything else in the other 20%.
And what'll happen is it'll flip. As Scotiabank continues to just dominate somebody's to CYA themselves, they're going to have to create a podcast.
Right.
Yeah, that's as soon as that flips. The first mover advantage is the people that are willing to risk their ass, and the everybody that falls left is doing it to save their ass.
Right.
So,
And CYA, cover your assets.
Horrible.
Yeah, assets. Assets. That's what I was saying, not the other. Assets. Yeah. All right. So, either of you want to weigh in, or before I take June? No. June?
Yeah, I was curious if you have some other examples of how your clients have been able to push through getting a project off the ground, and because you may have the people who want it and are going to be pushing for it internally. They have to get it approved by the people who don't get it, don't see the need for it, and then secondly, one of the challenges we're trying to figure out is you get started, like can you start and then stop, or how? It seems like you should have a longer term plan to keep going.
That's a good one. Like some people will say to me, yeah, we're going to do this for about, a month.
Yeah.
And that's that's not enough time. So again, what advice do you have for that in terms of longevity and how many episodes? And
I'm up to 477 now, so. Started as a pilot internally, and also demonstrate, one of the easiest ways to do that is to demonstrate someone else's podcast who's indie talking about the corporate brand, and say either we control the message or somebody else does. Like a good example I've used, there's a woman in our organization, NewEnglandPodcasting.com, Mrs. B, who runs the Patriot World podcast, which is sports for the Patriots. And the New England Patriots are like, that's a really good show. We need to get on board. And suddenly they have 12 different podcasts, Training Week and all this stuff. But it goes back to CYA. You can just demonstrate to somebody here, either we're going to be in charge of the message about this, or we're going to let somebody else do it, and they may not say something we like.
all right, so let me just take Bob, and then I'll come over to Aaron, and then Mark and Bob.
I guess I'm not sure whether this is a question or a comment, or it may be a little bit of both, but I'm wondering what people think, because to me, the issue here is the technological issue, getting a corporate client to buy into the technology. The technology is easy, and podcasting, in the grand scheme of things, is so cheap that it's just a spit for any reasonable sized corporation. it's strategy. And show me how this fits into our marketing / communication / PR / customer service strategy. Show me where the return is on that strategy. So I'm wondering what you guys think or have experienced in terms of that.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely, you're dead on with that. The biggest thing you have to have is a corporate champion. You need someone on the inside that just believes that you can't sell. Because pretty much if you don't have that, you're not going to be able to get off the ground. You know, now you can try and make a champion, that's possible, but that's an expensive way to, you know, to get things rolling. And if you're inside, you probably have to be the champion, you know, if you're already on the inside. But yeah, because the technology is there. You know, there's some tricks once it's up and running to make it work faster and to get them out more often and things like that. And that's kind of the special sauce that folks here can provide. But yeah, you know, it's all about the buy-in. It's all about the human side.
The other thing
Special
is-
sauce, yeah.
The other thing that's really nice about podcasting and any kind of digital media is you can measure a lot more easily. Like I get media kits literally every week, 5 or 6 from like the college TV network. Like, okay, how many people? Well, we exposed to this many people. Yeah, but how many people are actually watching that now? Are they sober at the time? Chances are, no. They say we have 355,000 students, you know, in this audience here at Wake Forest University. Okay, how many actually watch that college TV station? 6. With podcasting, you can say, okay, here's the click stream. I know how many people have visited the website. I know how many people have seen the show. I can even measure down to the last bite. So some services will say, you know, download the last bite of the episode, which means they've seen the whole thing, or at least download the whole thing. I can see what they've clicked on, what calls to action they've taken. I can see what purchases they've made and stuff. So you can say, this is much more rich than any buy you're going to get on the radio or TV.
Erin?
Well, I guess I think the thing that I'm kind of realizing is, I don't know how many people in this room were probably the ones that first said to their corporate department, oh, we should really have a website, you know, and 'cause everybody's doing it. And I'm wondering if basically the lessons that we learned from that pitch process and that adaptation process might be the model that we kind of look at when we're actually trying to get people to be adapters. Like Scotiabank is doing a lot of really interesting things in terms of being a more forward company, right? Like they are doing, their business model is different, their leadership is different than most other traditional banks. But when you look at the sort of process that the other banks went through in terms of who was first getting their website up, who was first, you know, with the government aspect of things, who was first with education, okay? Chances are the model is going to follow along those same lines over the next 5 years, right? So the same way that you basically probably encourage them, right? Responding again, like to the whole strategy model, right? You have to appeal to that, I would think, and then look at the models and basically say, okay, remember when we went through this process before, right? What stage do we really want to be at? And when you look at different types of organizations, you have the traditional factor, and you have the people that want to position themselves at the front edge of things. You have to basically know your organization.
That's true, yeah. Absolutely. Any responses?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, yeah, there's kind of 2 classic models that I've worked with as far as technology adoption. And one, you know, Jeffrey Moore's curve, where you've got kind of the geeks get in early, and then you hit this dead zone where it's too difficult for the rest of the world to do it. So you're going to have a period of time where either it gets easier or it's just so great that eventually people learn. And, you know, you've got to get over that curve. The other is, you know, Gartner has a technology lifecycle adoption curve too, where there's, again, it's the geeks get in early and everything gets hot. You get a lot of buzz. But then there's actually a downside where people are like, all right, why do I need to do this? Yeah, I heard you talking about it, but I don't care about this. And it actually dips back down and dies for a while.
Second Life is there right now.
Yeah, Second Life is there. First it was everybody loved Second Life. Now everybody's like, what the hell is Second Life?
You don't want to know my opinions about Second Life. That's the reason why I scheduled this session during the same time as, That's the reason why.
You know, but it'll come around. Yeah, this is if you fought that web in 90, you know, if you fought the fight in 96 of, you know, we need to do a website, this is the same game. There's nothing different.
All right, I'll take Mark, and then I'll take this question up here, and then just sum up and close.
Okay, I've been selling to corporations for a couple of decades, and one of the things in terms of really about the need of case studies, nobody wants to be first, but of course if nobody's first, then nobody's second. I think maybe we could help each other some way in writing case studies, and when I say case studies, it's going to be a 40-page document in a couple of pages, and then sharing them amongst each other. Like I've got a local bank in Pittsburgh that I would love to know what's happening in Scotia Bank, but I don't know how to. Like if we could just hand them a case study, and there's not much on the internet that are case studies. Do you guys have any ideas for how to foster that? Or
Start a wiki. What would it be called? I can register the domain name right now.
You guys, discount code #3 for 10% off the domain name?
Oh, yeah. Nice plug.
Well, I was just saying, this is a old media versus new media thing. Basically, why would Scotiabank want to tell the whole world what their great success about podcasting when their competition can read that and join them? They'd rather just take all the gold now. But if you're going to side on the good of the industry, what's best for podcasting, then yeah, gather up that stuff and run with it. But it just from my side, I've done a couple B2B podcasts. I'm not going out to consumers. I don't want 1 million listeners. I've got a very narrow niche, and I have podcasts where if I only have 5 subscribers, that can be a tremendous success. If you're selling something where if one person listens and that closes a $200,000 sale, there's your whole podcasting budget for the next 5 years, and that's fine. So that's once you get over the do we want to do this, then the next stage is what do we consider success? Where do we get our ROI? That's more of a challenge. But does anybody have other case studies? Does anybody got
One thing that's happening right now, actually, at Emerson University is I have a listener of my show is actually doing a semester-long project on podcasting and metrics and things. I think if you were to approach some college students who are in a bachelor's of business program, say, hey, if you want to write some case studies and get your name out there, particularly in a medium where there's an absence of that material, you can write the case study, and by doing so, you'll establish your personal brand, because everybody is looking like, what can we use to share? What can we use to promote this? If you're a college student who's a senior looking to make your mark on the world, and you've got the most distributed case study on podcasting or corporate podcasting, whatever, it's like gold, and you'll have job offers left and right. So I think just communicating that to a college audience to say, hey, you know what, if you want to make your mark now, write this case study, get it out there, and you'll be famous in about 16 minutes.
The other thing is that I think a lot of podcast initiatives are either solving or addressing a pain point. Very few of them are opportunistic types of activities. And so I think you really need to know the context of the pain point for the organization you're dealing with. Some of the projects I've worked on have been a brand launching. So they're looking at more of a kind of universal picture where they're looking at a number of channels, and depending on their vision of their strategy, be it sort of all-encompassing, creating a community, creating a dialogue, using multiple channels to facilitate that, and kind of create that cycle of activity. But sort of the marketing initiatives, each situation has a different set of pain points that are sort of points that they want to address as the return on investment, and so the argument's different depending on the context. And is Amy?
Yeah, I don't know if the question's already been answered. It's kind of a basic question. If you take a typical sort of old school corporation like a bank, say Scotiabank, what they're doing with the podcast right now, what value do you think the podcast offers to like their overall marketing strategy?
Oh, yes. Someone who could really answer that question is Mitch Joel, whose company was the one that implemented the solution for Scotiabank.
I mean, we're in a situation where we're looking at the banking industry and how you get more customers. It really sense of, if you go to a bookstore, personal finance is one of the hottest books you can buy.
Mitch, can you?
Sorry, yeah. We were looking at the personal finance sector. We were just saying that books, the 1 Minute Millionaire, all that stuff, the automatic millionaire, are so successful. Is there a way we could democratize this content and put it into an audio channel? People do have 5 minutes during the day to figure out what their finances are about, just like Chris's podcast. And it was just that simple: is can a bank that brands find the money, help you find the money, talk to us in a way that's really, really simple? And that's what we did. It was just that. It was just that sort of simple and easy. Someone asked a question earlier about how do you sell that through the channel. It wasn't really hard at all. We had a person in the channel who's passionate about it and wanted to do it. And for a couple $100, why not roll with it and see what happens? And the results have been staggering. They actually launched a second podcast called Find the Money. They have 2 podcasts now, and they're very, very successful.
Very successful. They're ranked in the top 50 in iTunes for, yeah, so keep moving up and down, but they're always on that front page, so
But why
that's
do you
good.
think they couldn't accomplish the same thing with text? I'm just playing devil advocate from a client point.
Because the way that portable audio works is a very different dynamic from text. People can listen to stuff at the gym, they can walk it, they can, my iPod I listen to in the car. I don't really listen to radio anymore. I've got tons of podcasts, and that's my content. This idea of audio is very sort of, it really is much more democratized, I think, than text. Text you still have to be fixed. Yeah, exactly. And you can listen and type at the same time. The people you ask these audio, we have comments that people, we don't know to the public. But people are like, yeah, I'm reading and listening to I'm, doing my chores and listening to the podcast thing so much. I want, literally at the end, we would like to speak to an advisor, please have them call us. You have people asking to be called. That's the world we're moving towards.
And for teachers in the room, they would understand this, where people have different learning styles. So some people feel comfortable reading, others feel comfortable doing something. And certainly with video and audio podcasting, because that also taps into the auditory and the visual learners, then you're reaching out to a variety of audiences. Are you a teacher?
No, I'm not. I have a question.
Oh. All right, so I see 2 more hands. Peter, you want to say, add to that?
Well, I had a question about when Scotiabank, as far as the reaction, and I don't want to get too much into a case study on Scotiabank, but obviously it's a success story. And when they went into it, did they have in their mind that they were going after a target audience with that podcast? In other words, my grandmother is not going to listen to a podcast per se. She may down the road, but a certain person within a certain demographic, was that part of the thought process? Was that part of the expectations? Was that, and it was a pretty low-cost roll of the dice to see if it was going to work, but did they have any plan like that?
We know, and there's only so much I can speak to, obviously, because it's confidential, but we know that net new customers don't come from 65-year-old.
Yeah.
Don't or do?
Do not. We threw a pebble into a pond and see what happens around people who sort of go around that pond.
And that's how they fund. Okay.
So as a follow-up to that,
You want to come over there, guys? Actually, to be honest, if you'd love tomorrow, Michael Seaton, who's the lead from Scotiabank, is doing a case study on it, so I really recommend you go to that. He's probably best to answer the question.
But I think you're hinting that your demographic is a young audience that's already kind of techno savvy. Would I be off the mark?
Yeah, I can let Mitch off the hook on that. I mean, if you look at PodTrack or something like that, you're looking at probably 25 to 40-year-old net income, $90,000 to $200,000, predominantly male. But it's if you're in the banking industry, it's definitely going to be a sweet spot for you.
Yeah, and I follow stats all the time because I just love numbers. And on my blog, I actually have a particular section of every podcasting study that I've ever found, and I even co-authored one with another company for Canadian listeners. And they all show the same thing, which is the majority of podcast listeners fall between 24 and 50. And people keep telling me that, no, it's a young audience. I'm like, no, there's like dozens and dozens of surveys that show differently. So that's something that just wanted to point out. Now, I see that we're running out of time, and we've got one more question. So I'll take this question. I'll ask the panelists to sum up, and then we'll call it a afternoon, then we'll have lunch. Yes?
Hi, I work for a not-for-profit organization, and I'm just listening to all the conversation about trying to get in touch with people and things. That might be something you guys might want to take a look at, because I have a listserv of students from high school to university and college. That's 200,000 students across the nation. We do a nationwide program, and we have that. So if you have people you want to get in touch with or do things, you might want to look at possibly the not-for-profit organization world that already has this established, already has this happening, already has this going on. So, to do an immediate thing, supporting somebody in a great message that will support students, youth, that's mine. Now, mind you, of course, there's more not-for-profits out there. So that could be another way for you guys to look at it. And I just wanted, because my brain's just exploding, because I'm sitting there going, oh my God, I got these listserv, 200,000 students across the nation. So it's like, wow.
I so wish you were in the United States.
So, yeah, just so you guys know, that's a possibility there. So, and anybody wants to come talk to me, I'm Stephen.
Stephen, hi Stephen. All right, so great. I'm glad you guys were asking those questions and interacting because, to be honest, I didn't have them. Didn't have my own questions, but this is all about interaction, and I'm glad that you guys took part. So I'm just going to ask, starting with Richard, just some final thoughts on corporate podcasting.
For me, corporate podcasting just fits into a whole grab bag of other mechanisms by which you can engage your audience. And so the decision to use it and the way in which you target it and apply it has to be thought through just as with any other mechanism. And it often works, I think, very well in conjunction with other mechanisms. So it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. So a lot of thinking has to go into it.
Thank you. John?
Just for people that are in an organization now and are trying to get a podcast through, push a podcast through, just from some of the stuff that I've seen, if you're not blogging already, start there. That's a great place to start, and you'll find that there's a lot less friction over in the blogosphere. It's easier for kind of the thing to grow organically. There's still some things about podcasting that make it very challenging, and it's not going to give you the viral spread you'll want to see. So if you're stuck in trying to convince somebody, start with the blog.
Chris?
In terms of metrics and stuff, we did last year about $20 million in requested loan volume through the podcast out of it. So the money is definitely there. If you need statistics and stuff, I'm sure we'll be publishing throughout the weekend. Also, if you need a sample of a media kit for internally, I'd be more than happy to put mine up under Creative Commons.
Awesome. So just to sum up, when it comes to corporate podcasting, you got to CYA, cover your assets. Awesome. It's not about the technology, it's about the strategy. Know the organization as it makes it easier, and I didn't finish that thought. Know the organization. Understand the company's pain points and what solutions a podcast can provide. So that's a good point. And as Richard said, there isn't a one-size-fits-all. Just because one strategy worked for one company doesn't mean it's going to work for the one that you're trying to work with. Demonstrate the ROI based on metrics and case studies. So remember, we need a case study wiki set up for podcasting, so someone who's enterprising and entrepreneurial, and thank you, Richard. And then start with one tool, then move forward. If they have a website, then move them gradually to blogs. If they have a blog, then they're ready for podcasting. All right. Thank you to our panelists. And thank you to each of you. Sandwiches are downstairs. Hurry up.